Good evening. Good evening, everyone. This is Monday, March the 10th, 2025, and we'll call to order this evening's Committee of the Whole for the City of Gahanna. Unfortunately, Mr. Schnetzer is out of town, and I believe Mr. Weaver will be joining us a little bit later this evening. I do have one item to add to this evening's agenda. I'm happy to either put it at the beginning or at the end. There is an email that was circulated by the Ohio Municipal League with regard to Senate Bill 104. Senate Bill 104 was reintroduced recently to regulate short-term rentals and restrict the regulation of short-term rentals by municipalities. So let's go ahead and just add that at the bottom of the discussion under section B of tonight's agenda. All right, if that's all right with everybody? Yes. Okay, with that, we'll move on to item number 1 under discussions, Department of Administrative Services update. Welcome, Director Weibensinger and Senior Director Vollmer.
Good evening.
Good evening. So we're here today as part of this year. We're going to be giving different updates. Can you turn this down? From different departments. So the Department of Administrative Services is the first update that we'll give this year. Senior Deputy Director Weibensinger and I will go through the Department of Administrative Services and cover the different things that we're working on. And then the individual departments will give an update at another time. So we just wanted to first start off with some of this slide will appear at the end as well. But what we have shown here is a group photo from Citizens Academy, an OpenGov award that was won, and then some photos from the safety training and the in-house CDL program that was stood up by the Department of Administrative Services. So just a small department overview. We are an internal-facing department, reports up through myself, the Senior Director of Administrative Services. The Departments of Finance, Information Technology, Human Resources, and Mayor's Court fall under this section. Senior Deputy Director Weibensinger provides direct oversight of the Risk and Safety Administrator, an Administrative Coordinator, and 2 management analysts that provide a variety of functions for the city. So one of the things that we do at Administrative Services in coordination with the Mayor's Office is coordinate community engagement for the city. As you guys are well aware, we're working on the Strategic and Economic Development Plan right at the current moment. And so up on the screen, the folks from Planning Next talked about this, but the next public engagement round is scheduled for the first week of May, is our Gahanna Vision Festival. So you'll start to see some information about that on social media, the website, and then at State of the City as well. The next council update is scheduled for April 21st, where we'll go over the proposed vision and values and start talking about the strategic plan framework, including those buckets, so that we can move forward with those as well for the public engagement round 2. The other program revolving around community engagement that we coordinate at Administrative Services is the Citizens Academy. We did have about 18 people finish the 2024 program. The 2025 program's kicking off on March 20th. We did expand the program this year based on feedback from last year to include a couple more sessions, including the involvement of the other branches of government. And then as well as week 2 will be a broader financial discussion in Administrative Services, where we'll go more in depth on everybody's favorite topic, fund accounting, the budget process, and then the CIP process as well. And Director Burry has worked on a fun public engagement where the folks in that program will actually get to pretend that they're us, and we'll pretend that we're a council, and they'll have to figure out how to fit this many projects in this much budget. So that should be exciting for this year's Citizen Academy. And then that is scheduled to conclude in the middle of May, and we'll send you the invite for the graduation for that as well.
All right, so another main area of coverage that we have through DAS is our risk and management process here at the city. What we work on with that is the annual renewal process of insurance. So previously, the city insurance was in the Department of Public Service for many, many years. We have pulled that up so we can have a better oversight into ensuring that we have the appropriate insurance coverages. Not too much, not not enough, to make sure that we are involved in that process. We do have 3 seats on that board, the Corma board, Director Vollmer, myself, and Ms. Jackson. So we have a better pulse on what is going on in the environment today as well. We actually work with the Corma Association to have our insurance broker for our appraisals. We stay on top of appraisals, again, making sure that what is being reported is accurate to what the market says it is. I'll kind of go in a little bit more of some software we are working on with Corma as well, where Ms. Jackson is helping them take the lead in rolling out this appraisal software. And it really gives us a lot more real-time data and analysis of what other entities in the pool they have on their books as well. So when we do our cost of expectations for insurance, of what we believe our costs are going to be next year, we can kind of know where we sit in comparison to other pools. We also oversee the damage to city property claim. So somebody hits a traffic cabinet, guardrails, a wall by the bridge, all of that comes our way. We then work with the insurance companies to recoup the funding for that as well. And then what we do, we just did a recent security and vulnerability assessment with Director Tim Becker, our public safety director, and explored our current facilities and 825 and make sure that we are aware of any security or vulnerability areas that we need to work on enhancing as well. What we want to make sure we're doing is always minimizing the risk and the liability to the city in all actions that we have. And we're working on the crisis communication plan. If last December didn't really hit home of what we really need to make sure that we have an updated and fluent crisis communication plan. So in the time of a crisis, we are putting things out, the appropriate messages out on the appropriate platform, the appropriate tone. Again, a lot of that does minimize the impact or liability during those situations on the city to make sure we're doing things appropriately. Safety enhancements kind of goes hand in hand with our risk management process here. Since DAS has been involved in the safety program, we have really bolstered the safety for our employees here. Last year, we were able to add 7 additional trainings that we previously had not been able to provide to our staff. We do have on our books, we built out our 25 schedule. We should be able to hit another 40 additional trainings to our staffs that we previously have not been able to provide proficiently. We actually are able to provide oversight on every employee to ensure, based on the training, based on the requirements, whether it's annual, every 3 years, upon employment, we are actually able to track that now to make sure we are becoming compliant with all the rules and regulations for a lot of the different jobs we have here at the city as well. One of the safety projects we've been working on over the last year and a half, you might have seen some of the AEDs in the park system as well. We made sure all AEDs in the cruisers are updated, and then we did an assessment of 825 to ensure that AEDs are in the right placement of that building as well. We are standardizing at the city as well, phasing out older technology, making sure that we have the most recommended AED technology and that it is universal. So if you're at any facility or any staff member can utilize the same type of equipment in order to be proficient in that. We do require safety training now on all newly acquired specialty equipment. As technology changes and the equipment becomes a little more robust, sometimes we have to make sure we are staying up and that our staff are getting trained by the professionals. So we do require that when we do purchase a new, let's say, wood chipper that we recently received, that we are mandating upon the purchase of that we do have the experts in that field on that piece of equipment are coming on site and training our staff. You saw it in the upper left-hand corner of the first picture. That was the Avant system that we had purchased, and that was the Avant professional trainer when they delivered it coming out on site. Therefore, all staff that utilize that equipment have the opportunity to be fully vetted in that. We did bring in the in-house CDL program that Director Vollmer alluded to in the first pictures we showed on the bottom left. That program was initially designed as a cost-saving measure. Right now, when we do have CDL requirements in the city, snowplow drivers being primary. That program, if we were to outsource that, was between $7,500 and $8,000 per participant in that program. We were able to bring that in-house. Last year, we had 5 graduates of the program. We have another 5 to 6 that we're beginning to kick that program off for this year. But in doing it in-house, we also found that we have a lot more control over the type of training they're getting and understanding where we need to enhance certain training before they sit and take the testing for it. One of our graduates was the mayor's rodeo winner this last year. So we believe the program is working well because they're already showing us the skills that they have behind the wheel. We did enhance our safety committee. Something that we've had for a while here, but it's it was one of those where people don't necessarily want to be part of the safety committee because you sit around and you talk about all the things that we can do better and how we can make ways safer. Ms. Jackson has taken the lead on that and really done a great job of formalizing that committee of employees. We try to address every single department. We meet quarterly. We talk about things that we are hearing from our insurance company that are happening throughout the state of Ohio and our neighboring communities. We walk through scenarios. We hear from them. We get their ideas, their feedback. They know areas way better than we could possibly imagine because they are out in the field seeing and recommending training to us. And then we go out and we find the trainings and we build that process for them. And then lastly, again, enhancing some of the in-house CPR first aid AED training programs and being able to work with Parks and Rec and expand that to beyond just seasonal staff and that type of staff, but being able to offer it to citywide staff as well, so we can continue to grow that footprint. We do a lot of technology projects in DAS. We offer a lot of support to all departments here at the city, even though we would say we kind of fall over finance, HR, IT, and mayor's court. OpenGov was a big project that we've been working through over the last year and a half. We were recognized nationally for our building zoning planning software at the national conference. There's a lot of layers that go into the software that we're working through, not just on the permitting process and the expediting, doing things paperless, doing things efficient. That platform in itself, we also use to streamline our property claims management system. Again, what we're working on is trying to have a lot of paperless processes in place where we can easily extract the data to be able to make better, more sound decisions as we move forward. That application does have the ability, as we continue to expand beyond just the departments listed here, but to really work on efficiencies in the paperless processing here at the city. We also work with TrueComp. TrueComp is a labor costing software that we rolled out this last year. As you're aware, we negotiated with the FOP and the FOP OLC over the last within the last 4 months here. This was a big component of us being able to be timely in those processes, right? Great negotiation or great labor relations was a major factor as well, and that's the hard work of Director Vollmer and Chief Spence and the mayor to keep those relations. But this software we rolled out allowed us to have real-time cost analysis on things being proposed at the table, which then cut down on a lot of the inefficiencies of having to go back and forth and sometimes leading into scheduling different days, a week, 2 weeks later, a month later. This was able to help expedite some of that process as well. Telestaff is the police and the communications technicians' time and attendance system. We work to support that. We work to roll that out to ensure that was getting away with from paper timesheets for our communication technicians and our officers to a electronic database where they can do their time and attendance, their shift bidding, vacation, sick time off. All of that can now be done within the system as well. Workforce Ready is another component. That's going to be our time and attendance for our unclassified. Everybody else rolls into this system, but it's really the time and attendance for our unclassified, those hourly employees. We work to help build the rules, help payroll maintain that system as well. This system allows us to do a geofencing. So those for, say, our seasonal kids that work at certain pools, work down at the boats, the paddle boats, allowing us to make sure that we can track that they're within a certain geographical perimeter when they clock in. Technology on your phone is, we want to make sure that we have some controls on that system as well. Centura Risk that's the AMP, that's the appraisal software that our Corma, our risk insurance, is rolling out. That again is the software for our real-time appraisals. Munis, we assist with the HR and finance system updates and data migration. Again, what we are trying to do is get off of certain servers, get into a secured cloud area for some of our sensitive data. We'll work with the HR IS system in order to migrate a lot of those files over so we have things in one area. We also work with, most recent project that we're working to close out is the onboarding system. So a paperless process for new hires. And so instead of having to come to City Hall to drop off your paperwork, engage our staff, which then takes time from what they're doing. We are finalizing that piece for this year's seasonals, which, as you know, a lot of high school kids are coming our way. Sometimes not the best with bringing papers. So this allows us to be able to track that and manage that process digitally, which should create a lot of efficiencies. As we transition from this campus over to 825, that's going to be even more paramount because it's not going to be as convenient for them to walk over here as it is right now. And then NeoGov Learn is another learning management system. This takes what I had talked about on the previous slides for the training opportunities, and this really helps us make it more robust and better tracking. We can now create individualized training plans, so when somebody gets onboarded, let's say a maintenance worker one in the streets garage, we can go in and have that pre-formatted as these are the trainings that you are required to take. We can easily track them in the system. We can send reminders if you haven't done it. We can see when they have done it. What we're working on also now is some of our training programs to where we can do voiceovers on, say, a PowerPoint that talks you through how to submit a timesheet, right? We can do voiceover on that, upload it into the system, and then people have a digital video that they can watch that has a voiceover explaining how things are done. That way we can ensure that our training is precise, accurate, updated through these videos, and consistent as well. Professional development is another area, as we have worked very hard over the last few years on our retention strategy and making sure our employees feel invested in. Professional growth and development is paramount. We took over the professional development tracking and oversight of that to make sure that our processes had accuracy and consistency. We work through some of our travel and training policies. We oversee the regulations for it and make sure that they're being implemented properly. We recently just did a training in these chambers for all staff that travel to understand how to fill out forms accurately, completely. So therefore, we're reducing the amount of back and forth. If those of you have ever traveled or government traveled, sometimes it's not the easiest process. There are a lot of regulations and rules that we have to make sure we adhere to. So we are working to make that as painless as we can to encourage travel, but we also have to make sure that we provide oversight in that process. We do anticipate with the expansion of the NeoGov Learn platform that I just mentioned, that we are going to have a lot more professional growth and development opportunities here at the city. Again, trying to encapsulate what we can do in-house versus having to do outside. Cost savings there as well, but also reliability of the training programs that we can offer here. Grants management is another big bucket that we provide oversight for. Over the last couple of years, we've really tried to get our handle on taking a decentralized approach and really making sure that we have some oversight into that process. We're working on our reporting and our accuracy. If you recall last year, 24, I came towards the end of the year, and we did kind of an oversight of what the 24 grants program. And when I say grants, this isn't the community grants. This is us going after funding. And grants is a loose term. Grants can include zero interest loans, technical assistance grants. They can be tax credits. I call grants is just a loose term. But right now, what we are working on, again, we onboarded a new management analyst in August of last year. We just celebrated a mid-probationary period review. Yay. A lot of help that has been in us being able to continue to gain traction in this area. We currently have around 20 active, what I would call, again, grants, loans, tax credit projects that we are working on. So there is a lot that we have in the pipe that we are continuing to flush out. One of them I think is on the agenda tonight is we're helping the engineering department close out the OPWC grant and loan for the roundabout, Taylor and Claycraft. We did receive 5 non-awards last year that we went after. 4 of them were the wastewater infrastructure grants. Very competitive to get some of those. We're going to continue to try as we go forward. And then we were part of one from MORPC for the CFI, which is the charging infrastructure that MORPC ended up getting. I count that as we didn't get it as well because we put a lot of work into helping that process. We do have 6 grants that we do considered finalized from last year that we're very excited to be able to move on from those and move on to the next. But I did want to take a moment here as well to talk about, we do have some federal funding, some pauses, some freezes as you want to, that we need to make sure that we have consideration for as well. Things like our IRA tax credits are a little bit unknown at this point. Again, a lot of these with the tax credits that are not things that we already under like a grant agreement with are things that we don't build into the budget as revenue for a project. It would reduce the overall costs. So we're hoping that things continue to go the way for some of these projects that they were going, especially those that affected some of the analysis we've done for 825 Tech Center, because those are some bigger infrastructure, EV, electrification components that could make an impact. 25, we've kicked it off rather well right now. We are working on some current ones just to kind of throw those out there for you as well. We are working, and we were awarded the boat safety education grant, thanks to Parks and Rec and Chelsea Heppert for helping us with that one. That's going to allow us to revamp some of our educational material, but the canoes and kayaks and things that you see that we operate down the Big Walnut as well, that helps offset the cost for those there. The GIS update was a technical assistance grant that came through Parks and Rec. Our project manager, Catherine Eichel, was instrumental in helping us with that so we could update some layers on our GIS and get support in that. And then we recently have submitted for a body-worn camera grant. We did receive this grant last year. It's approximately $100,000. This year, we did apply for a $111,000 reimbursement. So we're just pending the hopefully awards for that one as well.
So the last slide we have is just some different projects that we do for interdepartmental support. The internal side of the city, or really any organization, provides a lot of support for the outward-facing operations divisions and departments at the city. So I won't go through each one of these because I know Mr. Schultz is excited to present about the new Civic Center this evening. But if you do have any questions about anything on here, I'll just highlight a couple of them. Mr. Weibensinger was here and gave an update on Sustainable 2050. Him and his team do a lot of work on the sustainability front and the EV front. We are working on health benefits improvement. I oversee that project with the HR team to ensure our employees have the best benefits here at the City of Gahanna. We manage collective bargaining agreements and actively ensure our employee engagement and well-being of our employees as at the forefront of everyone's minds here at the city. That is what we have this evening. If there's any questions, we'd be happy to answer those at this time.
Thank you very much for the presentation this evening. Yes, I will open it up to questions. Mr. Renner.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Weibensinger, thank you very much for that very thorough review of your department and responsibilities. You're back up on some of the original slides, the first where you were talking about managing the insurance, and thank you for that thorough. But I wondered about contracting, certificate of liability insurance. Is that also your department? And also, when on the procurement side, when we get a PO for general contracting services, do we do any kind of COIs as well? And again, is that your department?
So, if I let me answer, yeah. So, with our procurement to COI, that names the city additionally insured is what you're going through. That is part of the procurement packet that we should be receiving back on any of those. That necessarily doesn't fall under our, because a lot of the projects are bid out at the department level. And so that will be part of the standard procedures for when they receive the packet back to review to make sure that they're compliant with that response.
So the department manages those,
Yes.
making sure, sort of like a checklist, right?
As part of the bid
And you have internal rules about what the COI limits should be, right? The dollar
Correct, and
amounts.
if there's any variation from what we would call the standard rules, then we would act, our department would act as the liaison with our insurance company to ensure that we are appropriately covered, depending on the event, the project, what depends on the variables, but yes.
Yeah, very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Renner. Mr. Weaver?
Yes, thank you, Madam President. Good evening, everyone. Thank you. As it related to the grants, I guess broadly speaking, do we have a sense of maybe those that we apply for each year, or maybe we receive them, or we're lucky to be awarded each year, and we track those, not necessarily like, hey, we're getting a 5-year grant that's paid in 5 one-year installments, but we know this money comes around annually and we're consistently applying for it. Do we have a good reference check for the types of grants, when we're applying, what's being awarded, when we're eligible to apply for them again?
Meaning that we're like tracking the dates of applications opening, submission periods and things like that.
Yeah, I guess more broadly, I'm just wondering the internal tracking process.
Yeah, so, and that's what we're enhancing. I'm not going to say that we're great at it right now. It's something that we are working towards. Part of the issue with that, there's a lot of variables at play. Oftentimes, funding that has been reissued annually, year after year, is non-committal until it's actually issued. So it's very hard. Let's say put all your eggs in one basket.
Right.
Even though we've gotten it multiple years, doesn't necessarily mean we're going to do it. We do monitor as part of our, I believe it's through MORPC, we do have a grant finder system that notifies us of certain projects. I get emails probably, I would say probably 3 to 5 times a day on potential funding opportunities, a lot of which we're not eligible, but we do explore to see the feasibility of them. Recently, again, it's a different market right now. With some of the funding at the federal level being shifted or frozen, we are seeing more competition from entities that would normally go for that, not going for that are now going for different things. So it is becoming, it's a very competitive market, not that it wasn't before. But we're still continuing to build that process in place. One that we're working on right now with the Violence Reduction Act, with our flock camera system and trying to offset some of those costs and enhance that program. That one was supposed to be out 3 months ago, and it was advertised, and it just never opened up until last week, and now it closes in like 2 weeks. So we're trying to make sure we're having things lined up, not overdoing the amount of involvement in case it doesn't come through, but making sure we're ready, so if they give us a quick turnaround, we're ready to execute.
Thank you. And I think I heard in your earlier comments, to paraphrase, it's not assumed that the
Correct.
money's coming our way.
Correct.
And so we are budgeting in anticipation that it's not. And so we're hopefully reaping the benefit on the back end, and we're all pleasantly surprised. So I appreciate that. And I'll just say, blanket statement that I've said multiple times, I appreciate this administration's desire to pursue outside dollars, whatever those may be. So thank you.
Thank you.
Are there other questions? Yes, Ms. Padova?
Thank you. Can you go back to like one, I think it was like the first or second slide?
What was the subject?
So, well, I was just wondering, because you said that you were working on the crisis communication plan. And I was just wondering kind of why that would fall under your department. That seems like more communications, but maybe just working together on it.
Yeah, so we're taking the lead to get it to a point where we can hand off. It's a big project to undertake that crosses a multitude of departments, including marketing communications. But we are basically the liaison with Risk Management LLC is the vendor that we're utilizing to help us basically corral everything and build a plan that is efficient and something that's not just going to be put on a shelf and no one's going to look at, to make sure that we put these processes in place to ensure that we are holding people accountable to make sure the plan is being updated accordingly and then executed upon in the time. It depends on the situation, but we are taking the lead to get it basically to a point where we can then hand off and then work to ensure that it's being managed appropriately.
If I
Thank
could
you.
add, the crisis communication plan, let's say a tornado were to hit the city. You imagine the level of communications that need to happen, not only between the city and our fire partners, EMS partners, but then what needs to happen from an operational standpoint within the city from each department to ensure that operations are continuing. So it's those internal communications as well as external communications. It's much broader than just, here's a social media post that needs to go up. So this plan is the overall framework for that, which then will get transitioned to the communications and marketing team to build those out. But this is really the higher level framework for what that looks like.
Thank you. And as soon as you said risk management, the light bulb went off for me. So appreciate it.
Yes, Ms. Jones?
With that crisis communication plan, is that the same as like when incidents happen and we need to respond? Is that all one communication plan?
So this was what we want to make sure clear, like these are crisis and not necessarily incidents. What we want to do are solve incidents before they become crisis. So a lot of this is going to be a lot bigger than, let's say, a social media post to mitigate things. These would be some of our bigger situations that we want to make sure, especially when things get crazy during a crisis. Communication is often one of the first things that breaks down, and we get inconsistent messages from various people. Misinformation spreads, which then causes other issues. So what we're trying to make sure we focus on in some of these critical incidents or crises, as we want to keep referring it to, that we have a strategy in place.
Thank you.
Yep.
I just had a couple follow-up questions as well. Are you starting to see any reductions in injuries or workers' comp claims or other types of quantifiable results as a result of the increased risk management activities and initiatives?
Let's see what you-
I'd have to look at, we don't have a ton of workers' comp claims to begin with since I've been here, so we would have to look further into that. But inherently, the programs, yes, they would. There's safety training that you might have assumed have gone on here that wasn't going on here until Ms. Jackson started. And so even those in general, I mean, you're one car away from somebody hitting one of our service workers out on the street when they're out there. And so I'd have to look at that. But in general, we don't have a lot of workers' comp claims. So it's probably a negligible, there's probably not a correlation specifically.
Okay, and I use that as one example. I don't necessarily think that that's the totality of quantifiable reductions in loss, but that would be something that I think would be helpful for us in order to put into context the expanded work that DAS is doing.
And I would say also, our approach is more of a proactive approach as
Yep.
well,
Yep.
because all it takes is one to financially impact a city severely.
Yes.
And some of these are very, let's say, the cost of doing some of these trainings are so minimal compared to what the impact would be if we didn't do the training and something were to occur.
Yeah.
So again, a lot of it is really trying to focus on reducing the liability that could occur to the city through ensuring that we are providing these trainings and having documented trainings that they have occurred.
Is there a reduction in premium based on some of this extra work? I mean, have we seen any kind of financial benefit with carriers, or are rates so high that we're not seeing that really anyway?
Well, I think it's all part of our pool anyways. Our pool works greatly with us to even help identify some of these trainings. We do sit with them, and they do, you know, advise us again of what they're seeing in the market, which then often helps us make sure we identify training opportunities to, again, mitigate that risk if something like that were to happen here. They have come on site, and they actually will conduct some of the trainings with us. Distracted driver training, they came out last year and actually did that training for us at no cost. They did help us coordinate chainsaw training, where Gahanna was the host, and we had other entities within our pool come out and participate in that training to ensure those that operate chainsaws are up to date on the most proficient methods. So we work with the pool overall. I think it's, you know, I think these are beneficial for the pool as a whole to I don't want to say reduce costs, but to minimize you know, growth in costs as things get more expensive.
Are they, I appreciate you gave those two specific examples of distracted driving and the chainsaw safety training. Are there other opportunities that they're identifying as increased risk for municipalities?
It's just we have a lot of conversations on it, and a lot of things that we are already on our list of things to do. So we also try to bring ideas forward for other partnering communities as well. Again, we have around 40 additional trainings that we're going to make sure that we push out this year, from confined space training to working in working in heat, working around loud noises as well is another piece. Working with chemicals, doing a chemical audit to ensure that employees that work around chemicals know what they're working with and how to handle them properly. Respirator trainings. Things some won't relate to other entities because they don't necessarily have the same setup that we have. But it is a good pool of resources to help us continue to take care of our employees.
Well, thank you both very much for this update. This was very helpful, and certainly allows us to have a little bit more of a thorough dialogue on what's going on with the department. So we appreciate it. And with that, I'm going to turn over the rest of the meeting to Chair Weaver.
Thank you, Madam President. Again, good evening, everyone. I apologize for my tardiness. Next up, we have an update on 825 Tech Center Drive. Good evening, Director Schultz.
Good evening, folks. Give me half a second here
Yes,
to
sir.
get connected. So good evening, folks. As we've stated, yes, just for the record, we'll be doing this update, the first committee of the whole meeting, every month until 8/25 ribbon cutting. So I'll be a familiar face if I'm not already. Obviously, you know, I just flashed past the project objectives real quick. We're actually going to get back to those. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the changes to this particular set of presentations as we go. I think that it'll be good for you council members and then other folks either watching at home and or in the audience here. You know, we'll get into some very many more specifics as we go. The first half of the presentation will be as standard as it has been, where we'll basically go over the construction activities for the current month. Current month just closing in this particular instance in February. So basically what you're looking at on the screen here are all the activities that have taken place in February, not necessarily completed, but started at least in February, and some of which continue today. Anybody that's been by the site, we had the opportunity to walk Ms. Bowers and Ms. McGregor through I think it was a week ago Friday. I will say that I was through, I raced around a little bit today to catch a couple pictures, and that was the last time I was through the building. And there are tremendous changes even from when you guys were through less than 10 days. So obviously, you know, the site changes quickly, and I think that you guys would even notice that if you were just drove up Tech Center, you just drove up Tech Center. But basically, the first bullet here is that the curtain wall installation continues. It's actually completed on the western facade, the western facade being this area of the building here. So yes, it is finished from the red dot where my cursor is now all the way to the interior of the building. And they're continuing that work on the second floor and third floor of the east-west wing, which runs in this particular direction here. Masonry work on the Sallyport as an example. So all that brickwork, matching that brickwork on the existing building is taking place. The multipurpose room is completely dried in. And you guys will see some pictures here in a couple minutes. But then the roofing has also been largely completed over the expansion area, this light blue area, the lighter blue area of the police department and so forth. They continue to do slab pourbacks. One of the areas that Ms. Bowers and Ms. McGregor got to see, which had recently been poured, is the area in here where it's basically just a nice concrete floor at this particular point in time and ready for walls. And those walls have already begun to go up. The holding facility has begun to take shape. And then also other framing work has taken place on the first floor as well. Under my upcoming items here, furniture procurement has actually, the RFP for furniture procurement and moving and logistics actually just published today. So if you know any big furniture vendors, send them to our website and they'd be more than happy to bid on this particular package. But you guys should actually, you'll see a furniture package here come before you folks for approval in the next coming months, probably May-June timeframe for those types of approvals. I've not updated the complete based on time because one of the challenges here is making sure that Tyler and the Elford P project manager is in sync with my presentations, and currently his monthly report is probably going to get it in the morning probably. So we're out of sync by a couple days, but we're working on getting that in sync. And I do know that weather days is actually accurate. We've not lost any weather days since my last update in February, at least till the end of February 28th. So a couple of interior pictures. What you'll start seeing on some of my slides are these red dots. Okay, so this red dot correlates to this red dot, and that's the location in which I'm standing when this picture was taken. And I say I was standing. I didn't take either one of these particular pictures, but this is the location of the photographer. So in this particular instance, this person is standing on the third floor, taking a picture out over Tech Center, and this where my cursor is right now is the multipurpose room of the senior center, which hasn't received any brick or any facade, but it's been fully dried in. And then all you're seeing on the back side of the building here, this is the south-facing side of the building. You're just seeing the extra brickwork that's going on, and the way in which Elford is matching those particular materials. Interior to the building, a couple things. Actually, after I left the construction trailer on the Friday that we walked Ms. Bowers and Ms. McGregor around, I realized that we actually had material. I'm going to refer to this as like a full-size kids diorama, where we actually could have went and seen some of the stone samples that'll appear on the side pillars. We could have saw up-close pictures of the glass and then how they match the brick, right? So this is actually out there for us to go and interact with. The vendors will go and interact with these. The architect does. The way in which the materials get affixed to the building and actually attached, the same systems appear here as appear on the building. So I've learned a tremendous amount about the construction trades as we've gone through this particular project. But yeah, materials like this are available to us. The next two pictures here, this is actually the detention area, and you'll notice my orange dot in the first picture here, and then my orange dot in the second picture. What you're looking at in the top picture here is that's the new slab pourback on the police department side. And obviously the side of the building is still open, so you're looking at the two Sallyports on the far west side of the property. And this doorway here is the equivalent of this doorway here. So we'll begin to orient ourselves in a variety of different pictures. I think when I show you guys the senior center here in a couple minutes and some of the renderings and construction photos, you'll get a better appreciation of my dots and arrows. You know, where we are budget-wise, there's been no change to what's been invoiced on the project as of February 28th. We're still working through that February pay application, so that number will change for March. But you will notice a slight increase here to our allowances and contingency numbers have gone up. We did approve a relatively, I think I said it when I was sitting here at the beginning of February, but we do have a couple of you know, what I would refer to as larger bulletins that are coming up, which are just normal and natural changes. The biggest thing that got approved very, very recently here was the addition of the rough-in for EV chargers. One of the things that Mr. Weibensinger was talking about, the EV chargers back here for the public, where my cursor is now, or the public for staff parking, and then for electrification of the city fleet as it would reside on the property. That is not something that was in the original program of the building, but obviously, you know, in recent conversations and such, we did add the rough-in, and then eventually the devices being placed in the ground in those particular instances. So when you see this number creep up here for Bulletin 5, about 1/3 of Bulletin 5 was the rough-in for EV chargers. I will note that the rough-in is for basically this entire parking island and then the island off the back. We recognize the fact that there's no sense, even 10 years from now, to have to put conduit in the ground and run extra electrical cable. Let's put the conduit in the ground now while we're digging a hole. Let's run the conduit that whole entire way. We're not going to electrify it day one, but the infrastructure will be there for folks to expand the use of those technologies as time goes on. So right now, our approved contingency and allowances are at about 18%. 18% or $867,000 overall. And we'll continue to update you folks as these updates tick on. The next portion of this particular presentation is going to deal with the senior center. So I do want to pause here and ask for questions on the construction and then anything that I've presented so far.
Thank you, Director. Any questions or discussion so far? All right, please continue.
Sweet, thank you. Well, actually, you guys are like, why you're going all the way back to the beginning? I'm going back to the beginning right now because the project objectives are very important. I know we've been through these ad nauseatum as the months and almost years at this particular point have gone on. But one of the things that I'd like to just call your attention to are the 5 highlighted bullets on the project objectives. I think as I go through the next series of slides, you're really going to see how the senior center, I'm going to talk specifically about the senior center in the next few slides. Next month, I'll do something else. I believe next month will be council offices, council chambers, public spaces, so on and so forth. But today's dedicated to the seniors in part because I've given this presentation to the Parks Board already, and then a couple other folks, so it was easy for me to get this one done. But as we move on, obviously, you know, you still see our site. The senior center is located in the northern portion of the site on that north wing. And as we go into the senior center, what you're going to see on the left-hand side of the screen is the overall space program. Not astronauts, right? But basically, how is the programming area inside of the new facility reinventing the way in which senior programming and other community programming will be done inside of this particular space. So basically, as we walk through it here, we have a lot of different spaces. Anything that you see with an asterisk here is a particular space that our current senior center does not have. Yes, they have a kitchen, but they do not have a demonstration kitchen where they can teach a class. They have a great room, so they have the big open area in which the majority of programming is done, but they don't have a pre-function area, and they do not have a lounge where seniors can just be come and separated. Sure, that room divides in half, but I'm not double counting spaces, I guess is my point here. What you're looking on the right-hand side of the screen is the overall floor plan for the senior center itself. And anything that you see in orange right now, the biggest orange box is the senior lounge, right? So the senior lounge is about 1,640 square feet. That does include this smaller lounge to the north. And then there's like a little library desk in there where a senior would be able to come in and do some library research, so on and so forth. As we work throughout the space, this is the large pre-function area. Just think of a pre-function area when you go to a banquet or an event in a convention center. We'll say there's always a pre-function area, right? So where's the actual class being held? The class would be held in these top two rooms here. This room is dividable in half. It can be set up in a variety of arrangements, as you're seeing. One is set up in banquet style here on the left. The other one is set up on the right-hand side in an audience style. And we obviously have the ability to set this up as classroom and put training tables in there and do a variety of different things just with furniture overall. This pre-function area is also programmable space. This area here in the left-hand side of the picture here, we've been referring to that, I don't know how, but we've been referring to that as the book club. Right, so if the book club, the rowdy seniors are in the middle playing their canasta or whatever it is that they're getting into, and the book club is going to meet, they can come out here and they can have a small conversation about what the events of the week have been as it relates to the chapter in the book in which they're reading. Obviously, a large portion of the space here throughout the middle is also programmable for a variety of different things that the seniors do. I'll also note here this is the demonstration kitchen area. The demonstration kitchen area is split into two functional areas. One is the actual demonstration area where a class can be held and cooking goes on. But then there's also what I guess I would refer to as a working end or a butler's kitchen off the back where a catering company could set up and do their work and then serve the banquet as it resides in the middle of the space. What just flashed on the screen here are these two green areas. This is the art room inside of the facility, and then also a kiln room that is sized at the seniors' request to hold two kilns and not just the single kiln that they currently have. Currently inside of actually we're going to get to that in a couple pictures in a couple minutes. In purple here you see the ample storage areas that we do have inside of the senior area. Any piece of furniture that ends up in the multi-purpose room has a storage place in the storage area, and all of that fits nice and neatly away. So the room can be fully vacated, and you can do exercise classes and a variety of other things in those spaces. Same thing with art storage down here to the south, and then other related storage that's inside of the lounge area. Restrooms are centrally located. Restrooms are centrally located, so if the facility was being rented, let's say on a weekend while seniors were not active inside of the facility, they would have the ability to access the restrooms from the north. But then there's also a secure set of doors on the south side here, so you can access the bathrooms from the restrooms from either the pre-function area or the senior lounge itself. One of the things that changes as we run through this particular facility, and we'll get into some of the numbers here in a second, but these two lighter blue areas are actually the staff space, right? So currently the senior center has 3 staff members that staff it throughout the day. 2 would sit up here at the reception desk, very similar to the setup that they currently have. And then the supervisor's office is technically accessible off of the lounge. One of the things, so when we talk about the overall space, so this is just the programmable space. So anywhere where a senior would go and take a class, anywhere a community member can go and sign up for an organized program. That space is increased from our existing facility by 119%, just in the programmable area. The example that I'll give here is that the great room over in the existing senior center is 2,030 square feet. Our great room is basically the same exact size, and then they have all of these other areas that end up getting programmed. So let's relate that slightly differently, right? The lounge as it's designed, these two sites here, is 75% of the existing great room that's over in our existing facility. Right, so the number of programs that can take place at any one given time inside of this facility is, I can host 6 different events inside of this particular facility where I can only host maybe 2 at the most inside of our existing senior center. Right, the seniors had an event referred to as Sauce and Song. Maybe some of you folks had seen the pictures on the socials as it related to that particular event. But that particular event took up the entire 2,000 square feet of the facility. and that was the only event that we could have. I could host a banquet up here, I could be painting in here, and I can also be playing cards in the senior lounge, and nobody's on top of each other, so on and so forth. So this new facility obviously is being purpose-built with the senior in mind, but also at the same time, my lower numbers here also being done responsibly. I've only actually increased the senior center by about 40% of its physical space, but through programming and proper design, so on and so forth, we're impacting the way in which the seniors interact with the space and the amount of space the senior has to interact with in a tremendous way. There's a couple of the next series of pictures, and this is what we'll end up doing where we do have renderings. So obviously we have an architectural rendering here on the right-hand side, and then we have today's construction photo. What you're looking at on this particular picture, my red dot, is the equivalent of my red dot in the rendering. And then my lines, my north and south line here, and my angled line, you will see that reflected in this particular picture here. And then the wall that you see running east and west, we'll call it, is the wall as it's designed out here. So you can kind of get a great sense of how the space is coming together, so on and so forth. The one challenge that we have in this area is the temporary barrier that's been put up in order to put heat into the building. It's right there, and you don't really get a full sense of the size and scale of the room. A couple other of these, I'm standing in the art room at this particular point in time. Again, I'm standing right back here in this particular, what would be the northeast corner of the room. The door is represented by the dot, and you can clearly see the door is outlined here and represented by the dot with this casework that's seen in the rendering here, and then this back wall as seen by this north-south, this east-west line on the top of the slide. You do get a good sense. You can look at things like the floor, you can look at the door colors, you can look at the casework, the cabinetry over here, and get a good sense, the wall colors, those things. Furniture, not so much. This is a high table with high stools. It'll be a regular table with regular chairs, similar to the table in which I'm sitting at right now. This is the pre-function area. So I'm looking east. This is the main door of the facility. So if I came through, the main door is just off the picture here to the right. But if I walked into the vestibule and I turned to the right, I'd go into the formal senior center. If I turned into the left, I would come into this pre-function area through this door here, where this lovely lady and her daughter are standing. This wall here, I will note in the construction photo, you're seeing the outside wall. That blue wall is the outside wall. But this wall here that I'm showing in the rendering runs between this post and the next post. So you can get a decent sense of the size of the room. The next picture may do us a little bit of a better job to illustrate that. Now I'm standing inside of the banquet room or inside of the multi-purpose room. And again, my dot here, my red dot here is the exterior door that you're looking at. And then the door that comes into the room inside of the rendering. And then this big beam that runs across the top of the roof here, that's the actual interior, that's the interior line that we're seeing here. And then the back wall. And the back wall, remember, is where the demonstration kitchen is. There's actually a water utility room that's off to the left side of the photo. That obviously is not part of the senior center, but it's physically inside of their space. You access it from the outside of the building, not from inside of the senior space, but it does take up a portion of their area. And then you can see way back here in the distance the demonstration kitchen and how that functions. That is a wall that can be opened and closed, so that if you were having class, you can set up a classroom style out into this particular area, and then the wall. I will say this, that there is a doppelganger of almost everybody that works in this particular building. I believe I sit right here currently. But I believe that this might be Mr. Schnetzer over here on the right-hand side. And I think when we get to next week's photos, or next month's photos, I think Mr. Van Meter will appear. And actually, I think maybe Ms. Padova was sitting with her back turned to the wall when we were in the senior lounge earlier. So with that, I can take any questions that we might have.
Thank you, Director. Any questions or discussion from my colleagues? Mrs. McGregor?
Are you sure there's enough restrooms for that space, the number of people? It seems short on the female side.
The fixture count is right on. The fixture count is set by code, so yes, the fixture,
Seems like we should go above code.
sorry, we should be above code?
I mean, it just seems like it's not, I mean, it's not enough to me. That's the only question. Otherwise, it looks great.
Is it just that single bank of restroom space, or I think there were also some single occupancy facilities as well, right?
There's a single stop right here,
Okay.
and then you have the women's room here on the left side, and the men's room on the right side.
Having just attended the Education Foundation Gala at Jefferson Golf and Country Club, which would hold probably more than what's in that room. I think there's more banks in that ladies' room than there is in Jefferson Golf and Country Club, if that helps.
More than 4?
I think there's only 3. Jefferson. I could be wrong, but I'm thinking there was only 3.
Any other discussion on this? Yes, Ms. Padova.
Can you go back to the another picture, the one that you were in?
The one that I'm in? Sure. There you go. I'm
yeah,
even
so
talking with
that-
my hands.
The brick wall that we're seeing in the construction photo, that is the part of the building that was there that we bought, and then everything beyond that is what we have built, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that I was putting that into perspective in my head. And then can you go back to the like aerial view where it showed parking and all of
Yep.
that? I saw some, it looked like there were some marked spots, yeah, right here, in the top of the parking
Here?
spots. Are those, no, over closer to the senior center?
These here.
Yes.
Got it.
Are those marked for like senior center only, or what are those ones?
Those are marked limited mobility. There's no enforcement on the limited mobility spot, so it's like the veteran spot or the expecting mother spot at Kroger. Technically, there's not a tag that says you're an expecting mother or a veteran kind of thing, so me being neither one of those things, I park in that spot. I shouldn't, but I do. Same thing that happens in these particular spots where they are marked, but technically there's no enforcement like there would be on a handicap spot. And then
Okay.
there's also some which are not shown in this particular picture. But remember, I didn't mention this, there's actually where my cursor is now, my highlighter is, there's actually a rear entrance, a members-only entrance where the seniors can park back here. This is the security fence for staff. Seniors can park back here, and then they can access the back door, but members only. So you wouldn't come here to buy a membership, or you wouldn't come here for a program if you weren't a member. You'd park out front and come through the front door. But if you had a senior membership, you could badge into the back door and access the facility there. There's also limited mobility spots and other handicap spots closer to the door, which are not reflected in this particular site plan.
Okay. And so the gated parking just below that for staff, is that expected to hold all of city staff vehicles?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
We
so,
can park out front though also,
yeah,
if we choose.
so essentially, the back ungated parking lot could be for the senior center.
Yes, ma'am.
Has there been discussions on marking it that way to be just senior center parking?
There hasn't, in part because if you don't have a badge to get through this door as staff and/or as a card-carrying member of the senior center,
You're not
going
getting
to
in.
park in this back spot because you're going to
Okay.
literally have to walk around the entire building to access the building. So there's really very little need for you to do that. And if you do, it's more of a one-off than it is a regular occurrence. The next time you were to visit City Hall, you're going to be like, oh, nope, I need to be parked outside. I will say that there's likely going to be a monument sign on the road here that talks about members, entrance, staff, and deliveries, which would keep people from coming through this particular curb cut here and drive everybody to the middle curb cut. But restricting it to senior only hasn't necessarily been, we haven't talked about signing it in that particular fashion.
Okay, I like what you're saying, though, that essentially they're not going to be able to get anywhere if they're parking back there, so any general public is going to park out front.
Correct.
And staff would be within the gated area, so that is going to be mainly senior center members that would know about that and would park back there.
Correct.
Okay.
And we'd also have staff, if staff did choose, right, because you do have this door here and there is a stairwell in there. Parks and Rec is directly above the senior center. They would be the likely ones to want to walk up the stairs. We would make sure that they were parked far enough away from the door. There's also those limited mobility spots, and staff definitely should, we have the ability to control staff and what they do for sure. They wouldn't be parking in the limited mobility spots closest to the door.
Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure that they had some sort of preferred parking, if you will, to get in there. Another question that has come up is whether there would be any covered entrance, and I know that that hasn't been in the plan. Has that been evaluated? And does that stand?
So we're still in the process of reevaluating it. It's been evaluated once already. If we do make an accommodation, it would be off of the front of the building. Off of the back of the building is unrealistic only because of the length that it needs to go. And then if a car is to stop where my cursor currently is, they're blocking a lane of traffic and circulation inside of the parking lot. So theoretically, we can potentially come off of the building here. I will note that there is a covered, where my cursor is, that's part of the canopy, and the lightest blue that you're seeing up there is the actual canopy system. So there's, from the curb line where you would get dropped off, it is a short walk into the building itself. But we are investigating, what the cost and the design of extending this canopy out to the curb line would be. It would not be a full portico like what we're dealing with here. One of the biggest issues and challenges we have is emergency vehicles, namely fire trucks, delivery trucks, so on and so forth. They need to be able to pass under this. They need to be able to make this turn and not crash into it. That would be a bad look on everybody's part, including mine, or mainly mine. So those are things that are currently being investigated.
Would it be an option to have it come kind of like where your cursor is there and come up through like where the sidewalk is proposed there?
So the current proposal is that it ends right where my cursor is now
Okay.
and not cross the road. So basically a person would come in the parking lot, they'd circulate in this particular direction, they would stop and drop their passenger off at this particular location.
Okay.
And
I
then
guess-
they would be, so when they open the door, they would be the door would be undercover. If the
Okay.
driver got out, because they're going north, if the driver got out, the driver would be in the raindrops at that particular point in time, because it really would be an overhang that only got you to the curb line.
Okay. And I guess my other question, more importantly, is have we evaluated the need for this? Have we talked to the senior center to find out how much of a need there is for this? If that is used, are there, buses dropping people off from senior living facilities, things like that?
And we've been to the seniors. I've given maybe less than 12, but more than 8 presentations to either the Gas Act community or our committee or the senior membership themselves. It is an issue that does come up regularly. It's one that we had looked at and actually put to bed and decided that it wasn't within the budget and it wasn't within the design considerations of the building. But then I was over there, I believe, at the end of January, came back, debriefed with the mayor, and the mayor asked me to look at it again, and MSA is currently reevaluating it another time. So I believe that there are other solutions. I believe that there are also other solutions for when we're loading a van or doing something like that. It's I believe this is under 20 feet of a walk from where you are actually undercover to get into the building to the curb line itself. So It's a shorter distance. There's if you're a single, there's a shorter distance to walk in this particular parking lot, in this particular arrangement, if you were just a senior member and you showed up and it was raining, and you parked your car as, a single occupancy vehicle in the parking lot and needed to get into the facility. So, yeah.
Thank you for looking into this. I would certainly like to, I hope that we can make those accommodations. One of my concerns with doing the City Hall, Senior Center, and Police Department all together was I have been trying to focus a little bit on the Senior Center, and I'm glad that we got this presentation specifically for that, because I think that this is going to be a great asset to our community to have this. But I certainly don't want that part to get kind of lost in the City Hall and Police Department, because we have had a lot of focus on those, just especially with the Police Department and the building and everything that's going in there. But with that said, I think everything that you've presented tonight looks fabulous, and it will be a great addition to our community. So hopefully we can get that.
I will, just sorry I cut you off there. I think that it's hard, I think, for the seniors in the presentations that I've given, for them to actually envision the quality and level of character they're getting. One of the last things, the last bullet that I had highlighted was daylighting and quality of space. This space will be hands down, canopy, no canopy, covered walkway, no covered walkway, spectacular compared to the facility that they're currently in, not just in programmable size and space, but also in quality and comfort. I might not put it maybe on the scale of the Jefferson Country Club, but they will be extremely comfortable when they go here to recreate and socialize and do the activities that they do. And it'll be a tremendous asset, not just for the seniors as well. I think it's also important to note, right, an asset for the community to come and rent and have graduation parties and weddings and banquets and those types of things in the facility. It'll also be a facility that we as a city can rent. We heard from administrative services earlier, and they talked about all of the different, groups that come and meet, right? All those groups meet somewhere. Why can't they come here to Gahanna to meet? Well, they can't currently come to Gahanna to meet because there's no space except for this one. But these spaces, the training rooms and other spaces, will be tremendous to welcome outside visitors into our community, to eat in our restaurants and so on and so forth, and then visit the senior center. So yeah.
Thank you so much for the presentation.
Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Padova. Yes, Ms. Jones.
Yeah, so I recall we've had conversations about increase in staff for like maintenance and cleaning purposes. But as I look, and I know that's a rendering and we're talking about banquets and things like that, are we thinking about increase in staff? Because like, we're almost talking like mini event center here, right? So like, have we thought about that and what it would take in the community senior room space to like staff that for what we will probably see as an increase in using it?
Yeah, so we do know that there's a change in the organizational model, right? Right now, if you were to rent the senior center, the clubhouse, so on and so forth, you show up here on a Friday, you get a badge, and then you badge yourself into the senior center and you set up your own banquet, your own facility. We know that in this particular facility, there will be staff on site. If you're renting the facility, you're renting a facility, so there's staff and a host, if the facility is being rented. The rental agreement will have would you like the room set up. Right now, the occupant or the renter themselves actually set up the space, which we obviously feel is, there's a host of issues with that. But yeah, there will be a host, and the room will be set up for that particular person or that particular renter. Is there? We also know that the senior model itself changes. Is there night programming and those things? Those things are being evaluated now by recreation, the recreation department. And those types of things. So yeah, we do see the model. We do see the model changing. I know that one of the things we talked about at budget time was custodial staff. We're currently still evaluating custodial staff to take care of the entire building. But one of the things when we'll come to you guys with a presentation when that's feathered out, that's one of the things that administrative services is working on. But as we get into those decisions, one of the things that we've talked about is maybe instead of janitorial staff who basically do cleanings, maybe they're maintenance worker ones, so they're doing room setup and room flips, right? So if I have an early afternoon rental, how does the room get cleaned and turned over for an evening rental? And we're seeing those folks as potential folks that can do that. If for some reason, we're having a third-party contractor clean the building from a custodial standpoint, then we would figure out other methods and models in order to one, staff it and then turn it over when it needed to. So it is a little bit of a TBD, but something that we are between Director Vollmer's whiteboard and my whiteboard. There's 825, I think, all over them, and it's direct projects and indirect projects like the one that you just referenced.
Okay. Thank you.
So, I guess in follow-up to Ms. Padova's comments, I would be supportive of some sort of covered entrance. I think that would be a wonderful asset for the community. But you mentioned possible alternatives as well. And I would be curious to know what those alternatives might be, but also what would be the process for moving forward with one idea or the next? Would this be coming from contingency funds? Would this be a request back to council for direction or for, I don't want to say supplemental?
For fund, well, I mean, that is funding, yeah.
So it would go beyond the contingency levels?
Not necessarily. We don't know, so we don't know the scale and scope or the random order of magnitude at this particular point in time. It is a six-figure change, there's no doubt about it. Is it a multiple six-figure? It's likely a multiple six-figure when all is said and done, because it's not a, some had suggested, we just put up a canopy, and I don't know that the canopy is emblematic of what it is that we're doing out there at this particular point. So it does need to fit into the character of the design, so on and so forth. So you are talking about steel and steel footers and, lighting underneath. And I just mentioned the word electric. I think it cost us $10,000 just because I did that. But no, so there's lots of considerations. Bollards are a whole lot more expensive than I ever thought that they were. I mean, we were putting in the EV chargers in the back there, and it was like, wow, a bollard's about $2,500 a piece. Like, I was like, ooh. So a lot of things that are in consideration, but then it also has to fit into the design of the building. I think that we can potentially get that designed appropriately, but then it also is what is it, and then where are we with the rest of the project, and as far as the rough order of magnitude goes.
So I thank you. So I think my follow-up request then would be, as we learn more, if we could have at least an opportunity to review our options before a decision is made, I would certainly appreciate that.
Sure.
Any other questions or discussion on this item? All right, seeing none, thank you very much, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you, folks.
All right. It's my understanding we had a quick change to the agenda to add a discussion item on Ohio SB 104. And this I will, sorry, Director, to keep you waiting.
I'll keep this brief.
For this, I'll turn to Ms. Bowers to tee us off here.
Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you for your grace with allowing the addition to the agenda this evening. Late last week, we received a bulletin from the Ohio Municipal League, a call to action requesting testimony in opposition to Senate Bill 104, which preempts regulation of short-term rental properties. This is proposed by a state senator who does not represent our district, and it would do a number of things, but mostly handicap local governments from being able to tailor solutions to housing situations that I think that we are best situated to address locally. Mr. Weaver and I have discussed being able to testify against this bill. The local government committee hearing is going to take place on Wednesday, likely around 2:30. I understand that Mayor Jadwin also is intending to speak in opposition to Senate Bill 104 in conjunction, or at least in collaboration with CAMA. And I know that, I think our comments are largely going to focus around making sure that local governments are able to tailor solutions to their communities, to the fact that it would have disparate treatment of short-term rentals versus our existing rental registration framework. And from my perspective, I also certainly have a concern about the impact to housing stock available for middle-income families and working families. When you commoditize housing, you take stock off the market. So I wanted to give that heads up to my colleagues, and if you have any other feedback or points that you're interested in making, please feel free to email me, Trenton, or Mayor Jadwin. And I'm happy to take any questions or comments right now. Okay.
And I would just express my gratitude and thanks to yourself and to the mayor for your advocacy on this item. The continued attacks on local government continue. All right. Thank you for that. Next up, we have items from the Department of Engineering. Good evening, Director. Thank you for your patience.
Good evening. So I have two items before you this evening.
For Miranda.
Good evening, Chair Weaver, members of council. I have two items before you this evening. The first item is we're working towards financial closeout on the Taylor Station Claycraft Roundabout project from a grant loan perspective through the Ohio Public Works Commission. We applied for the funding in 2022. Had indication that we were awarded the funding in 2023, and as you know, construction occurred in 2024. We're in the process of closing out the grant loan. The loan portion is $751,000, and it's my understanding that it's a low interest, 0% interest loan over a 10-year period, and this basically locks in the funding.
All right. Thank you, Director. Any questions or discussion on this one? The question I had written down here was just what is the rate? So I love tough to find a 0% interest loan anywhere these days. So thank you very much. Seeing no further questions or discussion on this one, are we good for consent on the 17th? All right. Thank you. Next item, please.
So the next item is request to repeal and replace Chapter 903 related to the sidewalk section of code. Do want to mention, again, just as a reminder, by the Ohio Revised Code, Chapter 729, that sidewalks are the adjoining property owner's responsibility for maintenance, upkeep, and repair. The city has had a handful of sidewalk ordinances before council. The most recent one was in the summer, August of 2023. And as we enacted those provisions, we made modifications to the criteria associated with maintenance, as well as enacted a cost share to account for low-income, fixed income, and for those individuals that may have disproportional corner lot, double wide lot, and providing some cost relief within that. As we've enacted that ordinance and are covering that scope and body of work within 903.2, the definition section, there was a provision that outlined development, redevelopment activity that has caused some issues associated with development activities where, say, someone was doing a renovation to their home, doing a small addition to the house that was triggering the potential for warranting sidewalk-related work, or there was a companion ordinance that Director Blackford brought forward on Chapter 11 that very similarly could call into question individual doing a deck or a shed in their backyard triggering. So in a way, somewhat unintended, overly restrictive criteria when that was not the intent. So the request for the repeal and replace otherwise is to lessen that burden, if you will.
Thank you, Director. Any questions or discussion? I did have one. I believe in the red lines, it was 903.3D. And I believe, this is when work within the right-of-way occurs for the replacement of driveway aprons or when driveways are being replaced. To me, it makes sense then that, I guess my question would be, is the responsibility for when that work is being done, for who bears the cost of the adjacent panels, is that dependent on who initiated the work? So if the city has to do work that impacts the apron and the adjoining panels, is the city bearing that cost for the panels, or is that still a homeowner responsibility, for example?
So I guess a bit of clarification for that. The intent is when a homeowner is replacing their driveway and their driveway apron, and as they're performing that work, they have the ability to impact the sidewalk panels that go through and traverse across that driveway to set proper grade and get that to be in conformance with ADA ProAg requirements.
I see. That makes more sense to me. So,
I have a
yes,
follow-up.
Ms. Bowers.
Yeah, just a quick follow-up question on that. So the same paragraph, when work within the right-of-way occurs for the replacement of driveway aprons or when driveways are being replaced. So if the driveway is replaced from the house and stops at the sidewalk and stops at the right-of-way, are you anticipating that the permit would also require an evaluation of the sidewalk and the apron at that time?
So if their work is, let me back up a second. So from say a garage to the sidewalk, there is typically 1 foot behind the sidewalk is the public right-of-way. So you have 1 foot of the driveway that is technically in public right-of-way than the sidewalk. That gives the ability for removal, replacement, all within the public right-of-way. So they are performing work in the right-of-way, pulling a permit to otherwise cover that small 1 foot section. If the sidewalk is in disrepair, then that would otherwise trigger them providing for that work.
Okay, and so this is a departure from what we've been doing, I think. This is different than what the city has been doing in terms of if you're, in the past, my understanding was that there was no right-of-way permit required if you stopped at the sidewalk line. Is that not correct?
It's only a matter if they're renewing that section of sidewalk in the influence of the driveway.
Okay, so if they stop before they hit the sidewalk, you're not anticipating that they're going to have to do the sidewalk?
Yes.
Okay,
It has to be in good working order, right? It There can't be raises or dips or anything like that,
Sure.
right? So if it's defective, they'll have to fix it. And that's really what this provision of code is saying is that if you're fixing your driveway, you need to be responsible at that particular point in time and do this. If you're putting a shed out back, we didn't feel like, you should have to fix your sidewalk out front. But if you're doing front work and it's abutting the structure there, it was only appropriate that at that particular point in time, they do sidewalk maintenance if they needed to. There are many instances where they don't need to, and they're just replacing the driveway.
And I guess my question, if I may, is more related to if the city is doing, say, street maintenance work that impacts the apron, is the city then going to assume the responsibility of the cost if those panels that cut through the driveway and hit are tangential to the apron, or is that on the resident still? For the homeowner or the business, whatever.
So if we're performing work, so if it's a matter of a water line break and we're coming in to fix that, yeah, the area of impact that needs to be restored would be covered as a part of the restoration work associated with that repair.
Thank you very much. I saw Ms. Padova's hand.
Yeah, just to be clear, if you're getting new driveway, are you talking about just the panels of the sidewalk that are in the driveway or across the whole property? Like if there's 3 panels down in front of the house that are not compliant, do they have to get those fixed as well?
So when they pull the permit and they're doing work for their driveway, the driveway apron, and if they are doing the sidewalk panels because those are in disrepair as well, we follow the City of Columbus requirements, and that covers the 2 adjacent panels because oftentimes vehicles jump that section, so there's additional loading on those outside panels that are otherwise a part of that permit process.
Okay, so it would just be the 2 that are,
Adjacent.
okay, so would there?
If the area of that walkway through the driveway is in disrepair, that would otherwise trigger it. But if those panels are in good shape, then they could go ahead and do their driveway, and if the apron is bad, they can fix the apron as well without touching the sidewalk.
Okay, thank you.
Mrs. McGregor.
If I remember from when we had ours done too, the pour for the sidewalk that's part of the driveway is different than the sidewalk adjacent.
Correct.
Because it has to be sturdier to support the cars and the vehicles.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, it's a thicker pavement section
Right.
of concrete.
I see we're requesting emergency on this.
Yeah, to lessen pending applications that are before either the engineering department on the right-of-way side or the planning and zoning.
I'm good with that, so.
Are there any driveway permits that this is going to affect? I mean, or are you going to interpret the driveway permits under prior code?
So with the warmer weather, we anticipate that we'll be seeing an influx of those permits for those that want to take care of their driveways and the aprons. So this is in anticipation of that work forthcoming.
Do we have any mechanism to alert our, kind of typical contractors? I'm sure that there's sort of I would anticipate that we sort of know who is doing a fair amount of residential work in the city. I mean, could we alert them to this? This is just because I think that in particular, this section is a departure from our process.
I think in part, right, this isn't so much about the concrete, the flat work folks. This is more about the folks who are doing other improvements on their property and when we're going to be asking them to do sidewalk work and stuff or and such. So again, I'll just continue with the shed example. I'm putting a shed, I understand, but it's more of an issue with those folks than it is with these folks, because this really isn't a departure from what it is that we would be asking them to do. This will be a lightly used, I won't say this will be a lightly used provision, but anybody who's restoring their driveway or replacing their driveway and all the way down to the apron, I don't think that they're going to stop at this particular set of panels and not also be replacing those if they're in disrepair and not following the the improvement at this particular point in time. They'll fill out their right-of-way permit, or they'll send in their permit, and we'll indicate to them that your sidewalk is in disrepair and that you need to replace it, which that's pretty normal and natural process, depending on who's submitting that permit. This will be a significant improvement to the way in which the code is currently functioning, because we are dealing with a tremendous number of, I'll say it, complaints in regards to, wait a minute, I wanted to put a shed in my backyard and you're telling me I need to fix my sidewalk.
No disagreement there. I think that is loud and clear, and I think that makes a whole lot of sense. And this is the companion legislation that we were anticipating. I think, what I see and what I've, my experience is that homeowners don't always do concrete all the way from garage to curb. And so I think that when homeowners are budgeting for this type of concrete project at their home, they need to make sure that they're getting quotes that are going to reflect that full scope of work. That's my concern about that language change. It's probably going to add a 25% increase to those projects, cost-wise.
I don't think that we can make that particular assertion.
Okay, well, thank you. Emergencies requested on for the first reading on the 17th, and then, I'm sorry, Ms. McGregor.
I just thought, so if somebody wants to have like a shed permit or something, you're saying they're gonna go look at the sidewalk even if it's not near it, or?
No, the way the code is written presently, it calls that
Okay.
into question.
So
We're
this-
table to remedy that by
Okay,
virtue of this
all right.
code.
I was
Code
thinking like,
amendment.
wait a minute. Okay.
A lot of Ms. Kovac's questions from a couple weeks ago actually related more to the companion piece than they did to Mr. Blackford's piece, because she was really talking about the when something gets triggered type applications, and that's what this companion piece actually does, right? We were hoping that the two could come together so there would be a little less confusion. Obviously, that didn't happen, so here we are trying to get to a better when sidewalk work is required.
Thank you. So on for consent on the 7th, folks? All right.
Thank
All
you.
right, thank you both very much. All right, next up, we have items from the city attorney. Madam City Attorney.
Yes, thank you. Good evening. The first ordinance that I am requesting is to address 3 different areas of code, all relating to appeals processes and filing fees, et cetera, all procedure-based. So this is to basically address some inconsistencies in code. There are several different areas of code that send things to Property Appeals Board and Board of Zoning and Building Appeals. In Property Appeals Board in specific, each of the places that refer cases to the board had different timelines, different language about standard of proof and of what was expected of the appellant and the appellee. And so to make that all consistent, I do have some red lines there for each of the 3 chapters to make them more appropriate in line with what we're doing in practice, as well as consistent with each other. And I would note that I am bringing this in conjunction with the 903 chapter change, because there is a reference to the specific 903 section that references the appeal process. So happy to answer any questions about that ordinance.
All right, thank you. Any questions or discussion? All right, thank you, City Attorney. Seeing no questions or discussion on for first read on the 17th and then consent on the 7th? Sound good? All right, thank you. Next item, please.
The next item is a return of the resolution determining the projected total population and selection of successor members of the Board of Trustees for the NCA. So in discussion with council last time, there was some desire to see a more close alignment with the statute as far as having residency requirements where the members of the board consist of residents of the district. And so in trying to craft that language, I sent that back to the NCA Board Council as well as the developer, and got some feedback there. And the areas of concern there were that while we were still in the construction phase, there was some concern that the residents may not be fully capable of handling the task in front of them, that until the board is fully operational and we have an idea of expenses and income and et cetera, that the developer appointments and the council appointments should not be restricted to just residents of the area. And so I have, the new red line is very similar to the old red line. I think there's just one change in a typo, indicating that this would come back before council for further resolution. I would suggest that we add language here that has kind of a sunset clause here to allow this to come back before council in approximately 12 to 18 months, so that when the construction phase is complete, we can readdress the appropriateness of imposing that residency requirement.
Yeah, Greg?
So, who pays the NCA? Who are the people that would pay the NCA?
The
Property
residents,
owners or the actual residents?
property owners. I believe.
So what incentive what reason would the people who live there have to be reasonable with the amount they're charging? Is that,
So-
why wouldn't it be property owners on the board?
Why would there not be property owners on the board?
Why wouldn't they be the property owners?
First, I would say that even the statute envisions a period of roll-off so that members are slowly replaced with actual residents of the board as the residency increases in the community. It operates essentially like an HOA almost, the NCA, but the difference being is that in the initial stages, and especially before reaching the completion of the construction phase, it's very much developer-led and based upon improvements and when it's accepted by the city, et cetera. And so the reason why is that, we don't know the speed at which we will get to residency and how that coincides with the actual construction phase of the project, and we don't want to task, so the benefit of having appointed folks that are involved with the developer is that they have subject area specialty in this, and they can kind of guide the process. And so that's why we would not want to leave that in the hands of just lay folks until it's up and running and established. But as far as whether they would be generous or not generous or have restrictions, they are governed by the petition. And so that sets the structure and the expectation. And we would also still have a voice on that council as the local government representative as long as we so choose in our appointments. But
The NCA, like in New Albany, was on all the new developments, but they were property owners that were on the board. They actually owned the property, not just residents, but they were property owners. Because it was on the new sections, the new subdivisions when New Albany did it. So these residents, while they'd be residents, they're not property owners. So,
I appreciate the distinction there. I'm going to have to do some follow-up research onto that to specifically address your question, but my understanding is that the intent is that the residency would be also property owners.
Ms. Bowers?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and thank you, City Attorney, for your work on the code cleanup in the appellate section for the BCBA and Property Appeals Board. I neglected to mention that before. On this item, I absolutely support a sunset timeline for this to come back in front of council so that once there is the projects are developed out and the apartment complex is full, we can reevaluate the makeup of the NCA. I do want to, I guess, my thoughts on this, Mrs. McGregor, are that while there is this additional cost, this additional tax that will be levied on this entire district, just like property tax and just like other costs, those are often passed down to tenants. And so I would expect that those tenants would have skin in the game. They have stake because they are going to be, I would indirectly assuming this NCA fee that's applied to the district. So I do think I certainly have a degree of comfort that some of the tenants who occupy the Casto project would have strong consideration for feeling a sense of ownership, not ownership, but a sense of stewardship for the community in which they live, and so helping to make decisions about the disposition of those tax dollars that I would assume that they are paying by virtue of their rent. But I'm also not opposed to hybriding that with property owners who have commercial projects in the district. So again, another good reason why I think that we should sort of create this sort of interim, continue what we've done for an additional period of time and then come back in front of us in, to your point, 12 to 18 months.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you. Yeah, I would just add, to your point, City Attorney, we're not there yet, so having this come back in 12 to 18 months seems appropriate. So I defer to your judgment and your expertise on that. But for
The resolution.
for the resolution's sake, we have on for consent on the 17th. Does that work?
It'll need to have a slight amendment to it, so it could be on consent, but it would be in a slightly different format than what we see in front of us, so.
It will just include the language where it says, upon further resolution of council, which shall occur within the next 18 months, is the only addition there. So I can send that out tomorrow with the new language.
Does that work for everybody? Okay. All right, thank you, City Attorney.
Thank you.
All right, next up, we have items from council members. I'll turn first to my colleagues.
Can I mention something
Yes.
just as a matter of procedure? So we will need to reappoint the two council appointees to the NCA. And so I anticipate that those motions will come forward at the March 17th meeting based on this discussion tonight and the recommendation that we revise a resolution in 18 months' time. I think it would be appropriate for that next term to be an 18-month term.
Sorry. You're saying what should be an 18?
So we're reappointing council's NCA appointments because their terms are expiring due to the year cycle. And so I believe I know that we will be bringing forward motions at the next regular meeting to appoint those NCA members, those continuing NCA members. And so I would say that would then be an 18-month term for those NCA members.
That would require, so our resolution dictates the terms of memberships.
Okay.
So we would have to change that, or the alternative is just we have this return to council in 12 months so that it coincides with the one-year terms. So we would either have to change the terms in the resolution, or we can change the sunset period from 18 months to 12 months.
And the 2-year terms would not be effective until,
So it's I see what okay. So the appointment process that's envisioned is to roll off. So every time somebody comes back before council, which because the terms are staggered, they would come back again every year for at least one appointment.
so for this purpose of this resolution, we probably don't need that staggered term language. It'll just come back in front of us.
The
Is that
whole
right?
thing is coming back before you.
Right.
Right, and so then at that juncture, you would then determine the successor appointment of trustees.
Right.
And it would take effect for any future expiring terms after the passage of that resolution.
Okay. I just want to make sure that we can appoint the two NCA members for the duration at which this interim resolution will be in effect. That's all I guess all I'm suggesting, if that makes sense.
It would be a 2-year term, though. I guess there's some confusion here, so perhaps we can have a further discussion
Okay.
offline.
That'd be good.
flesh that out.
Okay.
Wait, are we appointing them though to 2 years, or was it just
There's-
1 year when we did it the first time?
Correct. So to create the stagger.
Right.
Certain
Okay.
appointments were 1 year, and then the others were 2, so that every year, certain folks would come up for reappointment. So that was just, the 1-year term was only for the initial member for that cycle. And so then the further appointments would all be 2-year appointments each time they're before you.
So all of the people we would reappoint would be 2 years?
Under the current resolution, yes. They would be 2-year terms. Whoever you're appointing now would be a 2-year term.
If we were to continue the 2 members who are currently on the board, though, neither of them are residents or property owners in the district.
So when their term expires, whatever the process is that's in effect, they would then be replaced at that point, at the expiration of their term.
So then I would prefer this come back sooner, like the 12-month mark, because then we're definitely, I mean, that would be my recommendation.
I would support that. That's fine. 12 months makes sense due to the
Because
terms.
it's not going to roll off. It's not going to roll off any board members until their terms expire anyway.
Correct.
All right.
Thank you for that clarification. So, with that being the case, are we good for consent then on this item?
I think so.
I think so. All right, thank you.
We can always pull it off if there's confusion
This
once
is
we
true.
see the language, yeah.
Yes. And I can circulate that language immediately. so.
When
you
are
very
there
much.
supposed to be residents? Do we know that? When?
I'm
And
sorry?
maybe that's another, because we're doing all of this because they don't have residents to put on the board. So when are those residents supposed to happen? Do we know that?
I think a lot of that depends on the progress of construction.
Right, okay.
So I think it's too early to tell right this second with a firm goal date there. But I can reach out to the developer and find out that information by next time.
Okay, just curiosity. I guess it doesn't matter if we're, yes, I'm fine. Next meeting. That's great.
All right, thank you. Yep, good clarification, so thank you. Now, we will turn to our resolution from Ms. Padova and Ms. Bowers.
Thank you. So this is a joint resolution and proclamation recognizing Food Waste Action Week, March 17th through the 23rd, and encouraging the community to participate in the food waste reduction efforts in the city, whether that be using the compost bins at Friendship Park, trying to take some simple steps to prevent food waste, and taking advantage of the nutrients in our food that can help us grow more of it. So, yeah, if anybody has any questions, let me know.
All right, thank you, Ms. Padova. Any questions or discussion? Yes,
I
Mrs.
have
McGregor.
I was happened to be reading today about this came up in Belgium, and they had different cities, because it was kind of like, sort of an urban legend, so it came from different cities, but in Antwerp, they offered free chickens to residents. And it was either 2 or 3 per family. The city bought them and gave them to the residents, and they had education to go along with how to take care of the chickens and everything. And they were not allowed to harvest the chickens for 2 years. They had to let the chickens provide eggs for at least 2 years. So not only gave the families eggs, but then what they did was they used their scrap food to feed the chickens. So what they found was a large decline in the amount of food that went into the landfill because the chickens were eating it to make eggs. And so like they had pictures, I mean, you know, you can give chickens leftover grits or broccoli or pick up weeds in your yard or whatever, and chickens will eat almost anything. So this is like, this was a thing of like why, another reason why chickens would be good, because it reduces the food waste that goes into the landfill. And the fertilizer is good for all plants, and so they eat bugs too. And I even saw, not this is not about chickens, but anyway, but there were several cities about this, and it happened in Belgium, so you can kind of read it about it, but it was kind of fun to read about, to support this resolution.
Thank you, Mrs. McGregor. Ms. Padova.
I think I've seen that same thing. But I just want to be clear that this resolution doesn't have anything to do with chickens.
Oh, no, I know.
just to keep that clear. This one is just about food waste and things that you can do with it.
All right, any other questions or discussion on this item? Yes, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to join with council on this as a joint proclamation and resolution. So Joe Lombardi, I'm very excited to say Joe Lombardi, Executive Director of SWACO, will be here on Monday to receive this joint proclamation. We will introduce him to that concept on Monday, but he was very excited, and as I appreciated the reference to with our work with SWACO, SWACO's been very instrumental in obviously leading the way, but being a great partner of ours to enable us to grow those efforts here in the city. So look forward to seeing him here on Monday.
Wonderful, thank you, Mayor. Appreciate it. All right, we'll put this, oh, I'm sorry, Mr. McGregor.
Just as far as home composting too, we've composted like, we've been married 50 years, probably 45 of them anyway. But we will fill up our compost bin, and it's probably 5 feet tall. And we will fill it up with leaves and only vegetable matter, no protein, all winter, and it's like down halfway. It is decomposed halfway. And so, like, it just shows how, even in your own yard, and we always pull stuff out from the bottom, but as it goes down, the weather and it does decompose pretty fast even in your backyard. So, I mean, people can have, it's nice we have options in Friendship Park, like to take yours, but you can also do it in your own yard, which is very helpful for your plants and everything, so.
Mr. Renner.
Yeah, thank you. Mrs. McGregor, thank you for your earlier comments. I was sitting here smiling and laughing because, as you know, I'm in great cohorts with you on the matter of chickens. Even though I know that this is not anything to do with chickens, but I definitely appreciate the bio-food chain, if you will. And also, I was going to make a comment about the home composting because we do it as well. And we don't use any artificial, synthetic, God, it's too tired, on our lawn. But we actually spread the compost. We actually have a compost spreader. And our lawn is also very green. So that's another use. It's not just for flower gardens or anything like that. Fertilizers, that's the word I was actually looking for. Jesus. So anyway, but composting is actually a very good fertilizer for your yard. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Renner. All right, on for consent next week. All right, next up, I will turn to Mr. Renner for the next two resolutions.
Yes, thank you. The first is a joint resolution proclamation recognizing the first girls troop of the Boy Scouts of America right here in Gahanna. And a constituent on the west side actually made me aware of this. I did not know anything was going on. I didn't even know the Boy Scouts had actually, split and start having girls. So I had a great education myself, learning about this. Ike Engel is the person that's chaperoning this. She does have, there's another person, and I forget their names. This isn't purely Gahanna girls, I just want to let you know, but it's predominantly Gahanna girls. There are some city. But Ike Engel and Troop 7456 will be here on Monday.
Wonderful, Mr. Renner. Any questions or discussion on this item? I'll just say how also fitting for our Women's History Month celebrations ongoing, so thank you very much for this. Are folks okay with consent for this one?
Sure.
All right, thank you. Next resolution, please, Mr. Renner.
Thank you. I have been actually contemplating this resolution for a while. World Water Day is a United Nations thing. They have thematic to do with fresh water every year, but it's a natural fit for Gahanna because we have a very deep rooted connection to water. Our name is actually, a Native American word, a 3-in-1, and recognizing the confluence area of the Big Walnut, the Rocky Fork, and the Sycamore Run. I can go on, and we champion the Three Creeks ideology in our, gosh, I'm being really aphasia. The branding, thanks to the mayor and her administration. We also work hard with stormwater management, with soil and water, their best management practices. However, we do know that storms are increasing both in frequency and intensity due to climate change. And the fact is the continual overheating in the atmosphere will result in more extreme weather and heavier storm events and more extreme droughts. And from a sustainability point of view, we need to look at infiltrating stormwater above the minimum stormwater standards to reduce our flooding. And we know we have flooding issues. And you've heard me say this more times than not. The point is that we should be recharging groundwater and not pushing this off into the streams. And that is also a source of pollution because of the runoff from buildings and the runoff from streets and what have you. So the oils and everything is getting into the streets. So we need to figure out and be more committed to more advanced stormwater management. This also includes adding public language around green infrastructure. I know that actually has been used loosely here and there, but it actually does mean something. Responsible development and public education on stormwater and watershed management. Pervious pavement, streetscaping, more than just bioswales, but we can actually look at, and I would love to actually, and I've talked about this, having a community project, in particular on the west side for green infrastructure. The key points of this resolution, beyond actually recognizing World Water Day, recognizes that stormwater management as a crucial tool for protecting water quality, and that's the point here. Reaffirms our city's commitment to sustainable water policies, conservation efforts, and community engagement and water protection initiatives, something that we already sort of do, and then encourages our residents and businesses and organizations to participate in activities that promote water conservation and pollution prevention. So by passing this resolution, we'll send a clear message that the city of Gahanna values its water resources and remains committed to protecting, improving our water resources for future generations. This will be the first in Central Ohio that recognizes water in this way. And I want you to know both the Ohio Environmental Council and Franklin County, the Franklin Soil and Water is definitely eyeing this, and OEC probably will be here Monday. This resolution also builds our existing environmental initiatives and encourages partnerships with local, regional, and state organizations. And it's a commitment to identifying green infrastructure projects, and hopefully we can actually get to do something, especially for the flooding mitigation on the west side. With that, I'll just stand ready for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Renner. Any questions or discussion? I see Mrs. McGregor.
I'm kind of talkative tonight. One thing I want to say is, I think maybe in our Uniquely Gahanna or something, we could do an article on the differences between sewers. Now that lawn mowing season has come up, you see a lot of people blow their grass clippings down into the sewers. And a lot of people just think, well, it's all treated. Well, storm sewers just go straight to the nearest creek or waterway. So I know when I always would talk to kids and talk about sewers, they always thought sewers were sewers. Well, they're not. There's two different kinds. So in fact, we used to have a mural on one of the walls of the bridge at Creekside that kind of outlined that. So maybe we could do something, or maybe in the water bills or something that kind of like emphasizes the different kind of sewers, like even paint and dirt or whatever kids put down sewers. The other thing I want to say is in Gahanna, there's a firm called Design Outreach, and they're at Johnstown and Stigler's. And they do, the guy there has designed like a water type device for wells in Africa. And they're about $15,000, I think, for a well, but it's based on, they drill down so far, but it's like a bicycle that runs, and they provide fresh water for places. And it's not just Africa, but anywhere where there's not, I think the first ones were in Africa, but they've done some others in East Asia too. But they, rather than carrying water or having dirty water, they can get the groundwater up and provide fresh water. And that's a local business here in Gahanna, so I just wanted to call them out. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the storm sewer, Mayor Jedwin has heard me lament about that how many times, because I actually do see that leaves and grass. People are blowing it, and I run to them and tell them, please stop doing that. Do you understand where this goes? So thank you.
Thank you both for that. Ms. Bowers?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Renner, so much for bringing this forward. This is a very important cause, and certainly one that I think resonates especially well in Gahanna. It's particularly, I think, salient too, as you've mentioned and Mrs. McGregor has mentioned about with regard to managing stormwater. And certainly it's a threat to our community. It's a threat to our residents in terms of not managing increased rainfall, but also the quality of our streams. So I really applaud you for bringing this forward, and thank you. And certainly would like to echo and support Mrs. McGregor's recommendation that this could be part of a community education campaign. It's something that I know it's certainly been on my radar, and I get upset when I see piles and piles of leaves in the storm sewers, and see how that backs up the streets and adds additional water on the roadways as well. So thank you all for that. I wanted to mention one additional point here. I think that this is, we need to look at this from a multidisciplinary perspective, and I think that we're doing that, but one of the other disciplines that I think needs to be in this conversation is with our economic development team. By crafting development agreements, ensuring that our incentives align with the values of this community, we can do more, and we can ensure that new developments and new projects are meeting these values and these standards that we would like to see move forward in our community. So I would encourage our economic development team, whether it's a contractor, whether it's staff, to think about how to incorporate not just, these values that we see here in this resolution, but in other resolutions that we've adopted and other initiatives that we see. The comprehensive sustainability work that Mr. Weibensinger talked about earlier this evening could certainly be improved through private partnerships as we build out new projects throughout the city. So the more that we can be doing to incentivize developers to meet our expectations, meet our standards, and align with our values, I think the better that we'll all be. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Ms. Bowers. And I would just add, thank you, Mr. Renner, for your leadership on this and your passion for the issue and for sharing that with all of us. So thank you very much. Folks okay with consent on this for the 17th? Sure. All right. Seeing nothing further, we will go ahead and adjourn for the evening. Thank you.